Welcome, everybody. This is the Internet Society Foundation meeting of March 2025. The first question to the trustees of the Internet Society Foundation is whether anybody has any conflicts of interest to declare. Seeing none, I will note that we did get one regret as a result of Russ Housley becoming ill this morning. He will not be joining us, and we will have a couple of trustees joining us a few moments late. In the meantime, we're going to turn it over to Chris Locke, who will be giving us a foundation update.
Thank you very much. If we could have the first slide up on the foundation deck, thank you. So what I'll be talking through for the first half hour is an update on the foundation, but with a focus on the revenue generation, empowerment, and strategic communications teams. And then after that, Sarah will do a deeper dive into philanthropy and go through an update on our giving program and what we've been doing there. But firstly, as I go through, that's not the deck. It's the foundation March board meeting deck, not the performance one. So while we get the right deck up, what I'll be doing is going through the performance indicators, which that deck is a takeaway for. So I will be talking through those performance indicators, but they're part of a bigger deck. And then going in and picking up some of the highlights of the work that we've been doing in the first quarter of this year and talking a little bit about some of the work we'll be doing for the rest of the year as we go on. And we will wait a second. You got the deck, it's in board effect. So in board effect, it's 2025-03-07 ISOC Foundation March board meeting update. That's the one. Great stuff. So can we go through to the first slide on that, please? So apologies, maybe look at it if you're in the room on board effect as well, and look at this. So we'll go through the performances. Firstly, one of the things I'd like to say is we're just hiring a data and reporting manager for the foundation. One of the things I would like to look at is how we change the way we present these KPI decks to you. It's useful to see a pie chart that gives you a kind of a broad overview, but I don't think that necessarily tells the story a lot, particularly when, as you'll see on later slides, you see a pie chart that just says 100%. So one of the things we're going to look at is how we come up with a different way other than these KPI pie charts to talk to you about what our programmatic work is, where we are, and also then kind of, what the story is behind that. And that's really important for this first one, if we go beyond the overall performance overview into the first of the departmental overviews on the next slide. Where we look at content marketing and communications, where we have a significant great area of activities not delivered. Now, there are areas that are hugely over-delivered in that chart. And again, if you look on the slides on your laptops, because it's a bit hard to read on the screen there are areas where we're significantly over-delivered. So individual fundraising from CMC channels, we reached 224% of the goal. Newsletter subscriptions, 230. Human impact stories, we published 15 on a goal of 6. And other areas where, for various reasons, we undelivered or chose to deprioritize channels. So a big miss on content marketing and communications for 2024 was we had initially a goal of 4% a 10% increase in our social media engagements, and actually we had a 4% decrease. This was because we actually chose to move away from some social media platforms for various reasons and focus more on newsletters and getting stories out there. So this is why I'm saying I'm trying to look at different ways we can present this information to you, because sometimes just showing you a pie chart doesn't actually give you a lot of the rationale and the reasoning and the course of what's happened during a year with the KPIs. And I think it's more useful and transparent to be able to actually talk about those things in a slightly easier format. So there were misses with content marketing and communications. Broadly, though, we were overachieving in areas that are now core to the 2025 strategy, trying to get more stories and newsletters and activities like that, and trying to step away from some of the just quant-based social media engagement statistics, which increasingly aren't valuable and more importantly, don't always connect us to our audiences in a meaningful way. You know, sometimes there's just quite simple statistics. Ted.
Thanks very much. I guess one of the questions that comes up is whether we're tailoring the approach to specific social media to the emerging kind of characteristics of that social media. I think we see Blue Sky as kind of running itself as a successor to Twitter's early years. Mastodon is a much more technical audience and a much more diverse one. And LinkedIn, of course, focused on sort of the business connections aspect of it. What I tend to see by Mastodon and LinkedIn actually looks closer rather than more differentiated. And I wondered whether it's part of the strategy going forward to do more of that differentiation or simply to move to social media where we're in control of the platform, like the newsletter completely.
Yeah, it's a mix. So LinkedIn is a great example. A lot of those newsletter subscriptions have been triggered by us launching the newsletter via LinkedIn and using LinkedIn as a publishing platform for the newsletter. So it's about recognizing where there are platforms and networks that our audience actually use, and the engagement is a quality engagement, and maybe deprioritizing some of those where the engagement has become less valuable. And also where our audience increasingly aren't on. So it will be an evolving process. But again, that's why I wanted to talk about both how we present the KPIs, but also talk about how we discuss strategic decisions that have been made in the course of a year. That means that sometimes original KPIs at the beginning aren't the things we're reaching for by the end of the year. And then on the next slide, onto empowerment. Sorry, if you go back, because you've got two slides up at the same time. Thank you. So again, the empowerment team is doing a fantastic job. I will not in any way, shape or form move away from that. But seeing a pie chart with 100% on it isn't necessarily the most valuable use of the real estate on this page. So we'll look at how we do this differently going forward. We've had a really strong year in 2024 for the alumni in particular, and I know this is something that we've talked about a lot in the board, and we've taken a lot of the work on board from the comments about how we work better with our IETF and other alumni and how we build programs that really create that lasting engagement. But the alumni team, I think, have done a phenomenal job in 2024 at getting our alumni onto events, getting them to talk to each other, creating cohorts that builds that out there. And we had 29 alumni speaking at IEGF, which is fantastic, and a base of 363 alumni, and that's only growing. Our fellowships have very high satisfaction and completion rates of over 90%. So the way we're running our fellowships are working, but with a note that building a stronger link to our physical events to build people into the community is there. And they're supportive of our work, which again is the role of alumni, to create advocates for our mission and advocates for our work. So seeing over 60% of our fellows involved in projects supporting Defend the Internet is a good indication that that motivation of that alumni network is a positive thing. We need to train people before they come alumni, and our learning program is very strong with 3,780 learners completing and getting certificated on our program. I'll talk a bit more in some later slides about how we're trying to scale that, but it's been a very good 24 for the empowerment team. On to the next slides. Philanthropy, I will sketch over because actually Sarah's going to do a deeper dive on that in the second half hour from this session. But if we look at the revenue generation one on the side, As we know, because we went through the financial report earlier on, there was a miss on the target, but we had a strong finish to the year. And I think what we've managed to do is lay the seeds for stronger years, not just in 25, but going forward into the future. So we did increase donors. Donor diversity is a massively important thing for us. Not only does it impact on the PST, but getting donors in at whatever level, even an individual donor at a very small level, allows us to build a relationship with that organization or individual and then take them on to kind of further engagement and further donation opportunities. So being able to say that we had a 66% increase on the number of donors over 2023 bodes well for later years and bodes well for building this long-term sustainability into our fundraising strategy. And of those, 360 odd were new donors. So the channels we're using and the partnership in particular between communications and revenue generation is really starting to deliver results on that. That's going to be a big focus for 2025, is increasing the number of individual donors and also really looking at increasing the org membership and our sponsors from the organizational donors as well. Having that broad base of support and having that broad base of people, whether organizations or individuals, who are willing to kind of partner with us and give some money towards that, is fundamental to the long-term sustainability of the organization. So getting those numbers up in participation then allows us to look at how we convert that into more dollars further down the line. Next slides, please. Actually, we'll skip through the pipeline snapshot. You can read that and see the where we are with our various charts, as I'm 15 minutes in now. And go to the next slides, please. And we'll do some more detailed updates. So looking at empowerment, if we focus on in India, where we did some of our first training programs, with the Bengaluru chapter, and I was lucky enough to go over in January to talk to the Bengaluru chapter and hear about some of the work and the activities they're doing firsthand in January. But they supported the rural connectivity deployments as part of the chapter and trained 30 technical experts. But also we had 30 girls going through a deploying and designing computer networks training in and building that out into kind of how they take their first steps into the industry. We're looking at launching in partnership, and you'll see in a later slide, partnership and working with existing training organizations is a big way. We're looking at scaling our work. So we're looking in India to train with 10 colleges and universities through academic hubs and build that out of that first engagement in 2024. And we're hoping to roll that out in this quarter. And this is on top of the support that we're also looking at for Indian chapters in how we can make sure they're able to access funds to work with us on these projects and be our partners in these projects, and looking at how we can get around the funding issues to make sure that they can support this work. So looking more at scaling, we've got a first trial in Q1 with an organization called ALX Africa, which is the African Leadership University and Academy. They have a phenomenal training program. Going on to the next slide, sorry. They have a phenomenal training program across Africa, from the African Leadership Centers, the African Leadership Universities, to their online platform, ALX. And we have a first trial with them to load our platforms of training onto their platform, which at the moment has over 300,000 learners on it. Their technology programs are very complementary to ours. They're focused on data management and AI, whereas obviously ours are focused on network and understanding internet security. So there's a lot of very technical learners there who we feel can start taking our courses as well. We're training 500 people in the first test this quarter with ALX, and we'll look to build on that into the thousands if that progresses. But those kind of partnerships can bring us real scale in the amount of people who are exposed to the Internet Society's training program and becoming Internet Society trained people. As part of our fantastic partnership with Meta, we're doing the capacity building training with 30 technical workshops and peering roadshows around the world. Our events team are doing an unbelievable amount of work to support those activities as well. And also, as one of our strategies in the 2030 strategy is focused on displaced and refugee populations, we're doing a pilot delivery in the Kakuma refugee camp in Kenya, in partnership with one of our grantees, Computer for Schools Kenya, where we're looking at how we're delivering training into refugee populations and then looking at how that gives them the opportunity to build a livelihood outside of that. And again, coming back to the fellows, sorry, Ted.
I just wanted to ask a quick question about the designing and delivery content, computer networks in Kakuma. How are we managing the materials provision to that, right? I mean, obviously, the design and delivery has to be matched with the supply chain issue of what are they going to build it of? Are we also providing the kind of core resources for that, or we have a partner for that, or how's that working?
That's the partnership with Computer for Schools and DigiTruck. So
Okay, so they're handling all the supply chain stuff.
Yeah.
That's helpful. Thank you very much.
Well, just while we're on that topic, actually, one of the useful parts of understanding how we deliver into refugee and itinerant populations is using platforms like DigiTruck helps us immensely, because obviously one of the problems of particularly itinerant refugee communities is they move. It's the nature of their displacement. And unlike other community networking projects, when we can work with fixed communities in villages or schools, you're dealing with a highly mobile community. So partnerships through the granting of the philanthropy team. And again, when I was in Kenya in November, I was able to talk to the leadership team at DigiTruck and understand their work. Being able to provide mobile internet access in a way that allows us to support those communities as they move and keep them engaged is really valuable. So we're looking at how we can do more training with organizations like DigiTruck and kind of move that forward. And also as part of the training, NDDS fellowship has been going on this quarter in the last couple of weeks. We had our student grant recipients in the photo there coming out of NDSS. We've talked a lot in the last couple of days about the success of that program this year from a papers and participation perspective. We're pleased to be able to start building the next generation of potential people who would give papers at NDSS in the future. And then in the alumni, as I said, this is a big focus for us. We're launching an alumni podcast, and we'll bring together Internet Hall of Famers and start really building the connection generationally between our alumni, as well as kind of within peer groups across our alumni. So really making people realize the value of the organization and the community that they're joining in the alumni programs. Then in strategic communications on the next slides. As I said, we've really focused on impact stories, which have tremendous follow through for us. Telling the human story of people's experience of partnering with Internet Society is immensely valuable. So one good example here is Ruth, who again I was lucky enough to meet when I was in Kenya, who came through one of our early training programs and is now one of the lead engineers for one of our partners, Tanda Networks in Kibera in Nairobi. An absolutely astonishing example of how getting someone into our training programs and getting them into the Internet Society community builds lives and livelihoods and has genuinely created an incredible career for someone as a consequence of this. And if you haven't already seen our stories on the website about that, I would urge you to go and look at Ruth's in particular. We also had an astonishing update from our Hawaii community network as well as part of our trip out there for PCT. And again, seeing the impact that these community networks have through those stories is really important. In terms of how we're focusing on our community communication, so this is specifically the chapters, org members, etc., that are the lifeblood and the partners of the work that we do. We hired a new director of community communications, a wonderful guy called Al Gaff, who previously had been running community communications for the ORG Digital Rights Group out of the UK. So he's someone who really understands not just our technical area, but also how you work well with community groups. So along with the rest of the communications team and the brilliant community engagement team over on the ISOC side, I feel like we've done a lot more to engage the chapters and really bring people in to the decisions we're making. And most importantly, we've done a lot more to listen to the chapters and understanding how our community can engage with ISOC and what we need to do to more of that. So we're getting a much better and more structured way of making sure we have really good two-way communications with our core community groups, and that we have dedicated resource to understand how we're managing that communication and how it's profitable. And then the last thing on strategic communications on the right-hand side there, as Katie said in the ISOC board meeting yesterday, we had a really good 5-year strategy ending in 2024 and produced a brilliant impact results document. And again, I would urge everyone to read that if you haven't, looking at how we have 5 years of impact in the course of that strategy. And being able to tell that story as a cohesive story not only allows us to celebrate the success, but more importantly, as we go into the next 5 year strategy and into towards 2030, allows us to learn and reflect from that experience and understand what we need to do more of and how we build on that success and where we go. So apart from it just looking like we're patting ourselves on the back, I think telling us as an organization what we've learned from that period is really valuable. So please do read that if you haven't seen it already. We refreshed the website and also, as I said, supported a lot of events, whether it was NDSS, the Internet Development Conference in Ethiopia, which again, I was fortunate to be at in January, RightsCon Apricot, and a lot of the peering training and event roadshows that we're doing as part of our fantastic partnership with Meta. On to revenue generation on the next slides. So as I said, there was a very strong focus on increasing the number of partners, but we did a lot of work on focusing on corporate giving as well. And this quarter, we're in the later stages of hiring a new member of the corporate team who will be there to help us bring more organizations on, again, with a focus on increasing the number and diversity of organizations that are there, and understanding how organizations partner with us and financially, how they sponsor our work and events, and then move towards organizational membership. So there were some real strong performances there. Again, NDSS was a good event for us. We were able to have repeat sponsors from Google, Futureway, AWS, and others. It says on our community co-funding program, and again, as you remember in our last board meeting in November, we very kindly got your support for the strategy of the co-funding program. Well, as of a couple of days ago, we're very pleased to say that Meta is our first partner there. The people that need to be congratulated for this are not in the room. They are the revenue generation and the program teams. Really an example of cross-ISOC work across the foundation and ISOC. I mean, genuinely a great team who for a number of years have built our relationship and our partnership with Meta to the point where they were not only willing to come back in, but to come back in at a higher level than they had before, coming in at 6.3 million, but also being the first partner with us in the co-funding structure and recognizing that their money was going to be leveraged. Hopefully, we'll be able to announce very soon with money from other donors as well. So I think this is a validation of a couple of things. Primarily, as I said, the incredible amount of collaborative work that goes on between the ISOC teams and the foundation teams. If you remember when I first came and showed the strategy in September, I showed that flywheel saying if these departments do their job well, it makes fundraising easier. And that is exactly what's happening. You know, we're getting program teams building really strong relationships with donors. We're able to tell and show donors the impact of what we're doing with their money. That means when we then go back and talk to those donors again, they're very willing to not just partner with us again, but increase the amount and recognize the value as well of the co-funding approach and how being at the table with other donors and other partners is going to be able to help them kind of see the impact of what's happening. So that's a really huge story, and I think starts us on the path of having predictable, reliable income from the co-funds over the next 5 years, being able to model out. And one of the things we're starting to do in the next few days is both with the Meta funding, but also some other funding pots that we're in advanced stages of discussions with donors on, modeling out what the impact on PST and program funding will be, so we have real security and reliability in how we're looking at our fundraising over the next few years. On individual giving, we've got a big new approach on a market level giving campaign with an external consultant this quarter. We're going to focus a lot on workplace giving and really try and get people at a situation where partnering with ISOC is quite a simple and easy and tax efficient thing to do, and building the channels that allow us to then start having a broader relationship with those people as individual donors. And again, working on building that breadth out first, so we have more donors and more people participating, and then turning that into increased revenue as we go all the way down the line. It's really important to understand that although I've talked a lot about co-funding, a successful fundraising strategy needs at least 3, if not 4 legs. We have to have strong org membership. We have to have strong sponsorship. We have to have strong individual giving, and we have to have strong co-funding from donors. And all 4 of those are fundamentally important. You know, having a diversified fundraising strategy is what's going to give us financial stability in the oncoming years. We can't just have a single strategy. So we're equally working across all four of those activities in 2025 to make sure they're all strong, although you will hear a lot of noise around co-funding because that's the immediate activity that's really getting a strong response from partners and other founders, other funders. And there's an end of year recap that again is too small to see on this screen, but I would urge you all to look at, see the successes of 2024 from the revenue generation team. And almost exactly on time, that is the end of the foundation update. Any questions or queries before we go a bit deeper into philanthropy? Victor is reaching.
Sense it. So on the funding ramp, do you maybe I missed it. Do you have kind of like a milestone approach to how you think that ramp up's going to look, or that's still kind of you're still trying to figure that out, like attainments and whatnot?
Yeah, we do, and this is actually exactly something that Sally and I are doing on Monday while we're all here in Seattle, is modeling out the kind of multi-year approach. We've talked a lot about getting the right money in the right way at the right time. So getting partners into our funds, they bring us a lot of different things. Firstly, getting partners in increases our ability to work more, increases the profile of the work that we do, and builds those relationships. So as I said, Meta were keen to come back anyway, and I really don't want the Meta partnership increase to be seen necessarily as a co-funding strategy win. That really is a win for the team that have been working with Meta for a long time. But when I was talking to them and we were talking to them about the co-fund strategy, being able to sit with other donors and learn from each other and be part of that peer group was a really valuable thing for them. And that's what made them kind of come back in with a stronger amount and a stronger commitment because they could see the value of that. The really important thing for us now is understanding how that money is used and the impact that it drives, and also then the impact that that has on PST and the impact that that has on our funding. So we're trying very much when we talk to donors to describe the way we're planning to do our work, the countries where we're working, and how their contribution allows us to do more in other areas. So, for example, there's one donor we're talking to at the moment who only exclusively funds work in sub-Saharan Africa. What they might be able to do is basically fund and supercharge all of our African training programs and maybe some of our community connectivity programs as well. What we will then be able to do is move our internal money around and look at that in other areas and spend more in maybe LATAM, more in APAC, etc. The metaphor I'm using when we're discussing this internally is to think about it as a roulette table. So we're maybe spending over the next 5 years 30 million on training, connectivity, IXPs, all of that work across the 5 years of the strategy. At the moment, we have that spread across the roulette table on all of the bets and covering all of the areas. As other donors come in, it allows us to move our money to other areas and increase the impact of what we're doing. So it is critical to realize we're not raising money. We need to meet the PST target, but we're not raising money against a specific monetary target. What we're trying to do is understand how we bring money in that's strategic, that supports the mission and the work and the programs of work we're doing, but also then allows us to be more clever about how we use our money alongside other donor money in making sure we're increasing coverage in areas that either aren't other donors' priorities geographically, or areas where we also have a strong focus, like APAC and lower to middle income countries, etc.
My question's more around making sure I understand the full processes on things. So when you had done the larger calls, bringing in, a number of people to talk about ISOC and the work, I had provided some introductions. That was pretty smooth. But then I had another one that I had thought of at that time and was able to more recently provide the introduction. And I'm not sure I did that in the best way. So was it good or what, so in case, I'm raising this now in case other board members have introductions. And the introduction is to Art Coviello, who was the president of RSA. He is on a number of boards like Tenable and other security startups, and a lot of security like rising stars or stars now, use him as an advisor. So I thought it would be a key thing. And the way I phrased it to Art was ISOC has a lot of support from the founders of the internet. How do they get more support from people like you who are leaders in industry? And then gave that to Isadora. But I let Art know he'd be talking to Sally. I'm not sure if I should have done that, right? So is that what are the steps so that we can support you? Thank you.
Well, I think that's terrific. I have an email in my inbox from Isadora trying to set up that meeting. So it's working. So that worked. I think it's fine. I'm happy to talk to anybody. We, first of all, deeply appreciate those kinds of connections. So please keep them coming. That's terrific. And Isadora is a great entree point for that. So, and she makes sure that the right people are on the right calls. And I think with Art, I will probably bring in some other expertise within the organization based on his profile. And that's what we would do with other potential partners or donors. So we appreciate it. Keep it coming. We'll manage it on our side.
And I didn't know it at the time, he also has a VC fund.
First, congratulations for a great job you're doing with your team. Congratulations for a great job you are doing with your team. And about the fundraising, last time we talked about possibility to donate by using mobile money. You tell me that you are working on that. I don't know if it's something that is already done or is processing.
It is absolutely something as part of the individual campaign we're looking at for 2025 to increase the ways people can give. There are a number of platforms out there now that allow us to do donations via mobile money. So we're just working out how we sync those into our existing individual donation platforms so that people can do that.
So I was very happy to hear you say, thinking about what the, being able to spread the impact around and looking at other regions. Have you done like a cost benefit analysis yet to see, when does it make sense to start shifting towards a different region to have that kind of impact?
I mean, to an extent, that's there in the strategy. We have done the work to understand kind of where we're looking at. That's done more on the program side,
Okay.
Rather than necessarily on the fundraising side. We're providing the money to allow us to make more decisions more easily and at bigger impact scale in what we're doing. But we won't, I'm not going to second guess a Michuki or a Dawit about where we should be building IXPs and CNs. I'm just the money guy. Right? We're gonna bring the money in. We're gonna measure the impact really strongly with the amazing Mel teams that we have and with support from Katie and the SAI team. But the decisions on what the best way to motivate that money is. But this is also where having other donors around the table really helps, because certainly, having a mix of foundations and private sector, so having strong foundations with experience in doing development and then partners like Meta is fantastic, because you then have really meaningful conversations about what are the best ways to build lasting change in these markets, rather than just kind of being a grantor and hoping that it works.
Yeah, and that was your last point was actually kind of to the genesis of my question, is that in this co-funding model, people who are interested in doing that may have regions that they're more interested in supporting, and just curious, how that discussion was going. So.
One thing in terms of our strategy, as we took the board's strategic goals and we developed the programs that we presented to you in November, you'll note in there with respect to connectivity, for example, there's a specific focus on some demographics that we want to emphasize. And part of this is so that we can demonstrate meaningful impact, right? Instead of just being everywhere, we're trying to focus. So the communities that we were looking at, that we'll be looking at for the community-centered connectivity would be around Indigenous communities. So we have a lot of experience doing that work in North America. We're now looking to expand that globally. Women-led social enterprises, so communities that are and really working to address the gender digital divide. And then, as I mentioned, carefully moving into the refugee environment. That's obviously challenging, but worthwhile, right? And then for the internet exchange points and the interconnection work, we've had a lot of experience in developing countries, and we're not going to stop supporting those IXPs. But now looking at what does it take to build a strong peering ecosystem in small island developing states, which is a very different set of conditions, and least developed countries. And again, a very different set of conditions. You don't have as much market competition. You don't have maybe as many networks to interconnect. And so it's a different environment, but that's where the need, we think, is quite high. So that's the kind of where we're looking to go, that then we work with Chris and the revenue team to find partners who resonate with that direction and are willing to support it.
Sarah, I think really time to move to your report.
Am I loud enough? Okay, it's nice to see everyone, as always, when we get together for the board meetings, and I also am welcoming anyone who's online. Nice to see you. I'm going to be talking about how the philanthropy team functioned and what kinds of accomplishments we had in 2024. So we'll be talking about our impact report, and in your board effect books, you'll find that there is a very comprehensive document that's all about the impact of 2024, and I'll be highlighting things from that report. And you will be seeing a copy of it after this meeting. We have not published it yet, as we're waiting to have this discussion with the board. So next slide, please. We are talking today, as I mentioned, about the impact of the philanthropy work in 2024. Additionally, we'll provide some highlights for 2024 Q4 as well as 2025 Q1. Basically, that is an update on what it is that we've done since we last got together. We'll also look ahead a bit of what's coming up after March or in March and beyond. And finally, talking about expanding the team. So these are the different things I'd like to cover this afternoon, our time here. And I will go to the next slide, please. Or not. Yeah, okay. So this slide right here provides you with an overview of the work that we did in 2024. As you can see, we awarded over $16 million in grants last year alone. That was for 390 different grants, 203 different grantees, and working in 111 countries. And you'll see right there, there's a map that shows you how that was distributed across the different regions. Africa, clearly the most grants by quite a bit. And then we have quite a bit of, excuse me, as you can see by the other numbers, Latin America. Also, we've got a lot going on in Asia Pacific. So, and there's some others there. And as well, you can see up on the upper left-hand corner, we have 13 global projects. And a global project is one that works in multiple locations. So feeling really good about the growth that we've had over the years. As we know, 2024 was our 5th operational year. Next slide, please. I'm going to be taking you through some highlights of some of the programs so that you will go into a little bit of depth based on what you just saw. That's the overall view of what 2024 looked like. But we're going to go ahead and look at some specific program examples, and you can see the list. Just a reminder that we are running 12 different programs. So I will not be highlighting something from each one, although there is something great to be said about each one. And we'll just start with these programs here to give you an idea of some of the highlights. So go ahead, next slide. Let's talk about Beyond the Net. Beyond the Net, this program is growing. It has become so popular, and it makes us so happy to see these numbers. 61% more grants in 2024 than the previous year. So that shows you that there's really starting to become a great rhythm between the foundation and the chapter community in terms of making sure that their projects are getting funded. You can see the numbers there in terms of the number of chapters. You can see the amount of money there, nearly $1 million. And it's just been wonderful to see the difference in the work that people are doing. There's just so much more of it, the volume, and we have some really wonderful projects that we're so excited about. I think for those of you who probably read on the chapter delegates list, it was also something that was discussed in the chat, is the idea that we're going to be no longer having a Beyond the Net Small and a Beyond the Net Large. Instead, we're going to just have Beyond the Net, and chapters can apply for grants of different sizes up to $55,000. And all the criteria is on our website on the BTN funding area page. So you can certainly find out about how the number of grants that you can manage, what the requirements are, et cetera, are all outlined there. So feeling good about that program and the growth from one year to the next. And let's look at the next slide, please. Yeah, we have a question. Yes, Caleb.
Yes, so for the BTN
Mhm.
and Beyond the Net, is there a maximum cap for chapters doing schools on internet governance and national IGFs?
So on the IGF program, we have generally just one event per chapter per year. So is that?
No,
that
I'm
would
just
be-
trying to understand like the maximum cap value.
Oh, for funding. Yeah. Okay. So it's $10,000 for national and regional. And then well, we do the global, which is 100,000 each year. And then schools of internet governance, I think also goes up to 10,000. I need to confirm that on the website, but yeah. So there's a cap in terms of how much money is available for those events.
Okay, so what I'm saying is if there is an increase, it's good that the chapters know because most of them don't know they have this opportunity that you mentioned, right? The reason why I'm emphasizing it is they don't know, probably they think they probably have up to a max of 5,000.
Oh, okay. Well, no, we can certainly make sure that that note is out there. You don't feel it right now, the chapters are aware of what the caps are and what the funding opportunities are. Is that right?
Okay,
So,
Yes.
yeah.
yeah, go on
Okay.
with your presentation.
All right, no problem. Yeah, well, that's this program I'm not highlighting, but we certainly do fund international or the global IGF, and every year we fund national and regional IGFs as well, and schools of internet governance. Okay, so more information on Beyond the Net is on the next slide. You can see here there was a 38% increase in the number of Internet Society chapters who received a BTN grant. And I have that figure that it was 34 in 2023 and 47 in 2024. So it's again on this trajectory that feels really good. And you can see the different the thematic areas that the Beyond the Net grants tend to focus on. We've got understanding internet usage and needs. An example here is that Tanzania chapter has been educating policymakers on encryption and cybersecurity to shape better legal frameworks for internet safety. We have addressing community-specific needs. An example is that the Puerto Rico chapter has been hosting a digital accessibility conference to promote inclusive online platforms for people with disabilities. On growing internet technical knowledge and skills, the Senegal chapter has been establishing university-based ISOC clubs to educate students on internet governance, cybersecurity, and technical skills development. And finally, in the establishing or facilitating connectivity, the Panama chapter is an example of a project focusing on creating community-based internet networks for indigenous populations. So those are just some examples, 4 different examples of the what the funding is going to in terms of the Beyond the Net program. And we have lots more. And I do always encourage any and everyone to look at our website because we have a lot of stories about what this program is doing, this program that is growing. So that's Beyond the Net. Let's look at BOLT. BOLT stands, BOLT stands for Building Opportunities, Leveraging Technologies, and it's coming up on the next slide. There it is, the pink one, purple, I guess, whatever. Okay, so it is about innovative solutions to address connectivity challenges. And as you can see here in this one, we have, again, some really big numbers. 543 organizations that are connecting communities and giving access to people around the globe. We're focusing on developing solutions to improve the internet connectivity, especially in communities where current technologies are not easily accessible. So there are a lot of different solutions. You can see we have there 186 innovative solutions, some examples there. We've got an organization, Instituto Nupef in Brazil, that was able to complete the cycle of acquisition, preparation, and testing of TV white spaces. We have another organization, Masilia, that I'm going to be speaking about later because I have a video to show you about the work that they've done. But they're also a Bolt grantee who's really come up with some very innovative ways of getting vulnerable area connected. So that's some information overall about the Bolt program. And we are feeling good about the different things that we're seeing. I do want to mention here too that Bolt is one of our connectivity programs. We have a number of different ones that we focus on connectivity. And we are, in fact, as you may recall from our action plan, we are making sure that we have all of the connectivity programs grouped under something we're going to call community connectivity. And that's going to be our program umbrella for anything that deals with that. And just to name a few of the ways in which we are ensuring connectivity, of course, community networks. That's a big part, a big focus of our connecting the unconnected. We're installing and setting up new IXPs and enhancing existing ones by upgrading equipment, providing training. We are supporting last mile connectivity through partnerships. We are deploying routers and other equipment and training communities on utilizing mesh networks during disaster. And we have been deploying backup, backhaul, and harnessing solar power in remote regions affected by natural disasters. So those are just some of the ways in which, not necessarily all Bolt grants, but some of the other connectivity grants that we have, and just will continue a strong focus on that. So we will go to the slide next, because I'd like to tell you just one quick story about a connectivity and a Bolt grantee. This is an organization that you may recall you heard from okay, everybody's nodding their head. So you know Project Waves, and that's been wonderful. That's an organization that is based in Baltimore in the US, and it's called the Digital Harbor Foundation is the name of the organization, and it is Project Waves. We have funded them with about $300,000 in this project, and they took the work that they did with that $300,000, and the state of Maryland was made aware of the impact that they had had with our grant. And as a result, they secured $3.1 million more to continue their work. So that's just a good thing, because we're always looking not just for the impact that our programs are making, but are they going to be sustainable and will they keep going? Pardon me. And this is a great example to show you that this in fact is really working well. So so that I just covered Beyond the Net and Bolt, and just some quick things about Skills program. Next slide, please. The Skills program is strengthening communities, improving lives and livelihoods. It is our one program that is very focused on training. Now, that does not mean that we don't have digital literacy training in our other programs. We do, but Skills was designed specifically for that. And like the Beyond the Net grants, for example, there's a lot of training components in that. But in this case, you can't, I don't know if you can read those tiny words, but you can see just some of the areas on which we've been focusing and the percentages for what those are. And I won't mention again, I think most of you recall that Skills was designed as a program that would just focus on regional areas. And we would do 2 countries per region. So right now we're working in Bangladesh and in Indonesia in the APAC region. We're working in Senegal and Ghana in the Africa region, and in the Latin America region, it's Brazil and Colombia. And these were chosen so that we could have an understanding of how grouping grantees together in one country may or may not have more success in building the community, because we've talked a lot about how important the grantee community is to us. So you can see the number of different programs that we're running in those different countries. And just to give you a quick example of one of the stories that we want to share, next slide, please. Makaya is the name of Coding and Employment Boot Camp. They empowered 721 vulnerable youth with cutting edge programming and employment skills. This is something that we're very excited about seeing, and we're seeing that they are in fact doing things like making sure people can secure jobs. Because as we've talked about, when we talk about impact, we certainly don't want to think, okay, so we just trained those people. It's like, what did they do? Did they go out and get jobs? And many of the programs that we fund for skills are very much focused on making sure people have that next step, that it's not just that they're getting the training. It's making sure that they also do something with that training to benefit their lives, the lives of their communities, et cetera. So we have that. We also have great examples of people getting education they wouldn't have otherwise, and again, leading to other jobs. And there's always just wonderful stories about economic empowerment opportunities when people learn how the internet can help them in that field. So that's skills. Next slide, please. Just, we're going to go through this one. Research, there's a lot of information on this slide. This program is our most popular program, and we get a tremendous amount of applications every year. This year, we will only be doing renewals for current grants, but for last year, we had an open call, and you can see that there was quite a bit of activity, nearly $5 million or $4.5 million in funding. The research, 468 products developed. We track the products that come out of the research that we fund. We try to make sure that we're very clear on what some of those outcomes are. So we're looking at the publications, we're looking at talks, we're looking at presentations, videos, blogs, and in some cases, some of these grants lead to a different type of project. If, for example, an IoT network in the Kyrgyzstan Republic has come to overcome challenges of a rough environment in order to, and in traditional deployments and openness and security are perceived to be very challenging. So we have had a project here where the goal of the project is to demonstrate that a useful, scalable, and reliable IoT application based can be built in an open and secure network. So it's a lot of different things that we learn from the projects, and then in some cases they are applied. For any of you who may have been around when we started planning for this program, it was important to us that the research programs that we funded were in fact about applied research. So you'll see that there in all those. So that's a lot about the research program. And just Ben, very briefly, next slide, please. Connecting the unconnected. I was talking a lot about connectivity before, so I wanted to highlight this. This is a program that was formerly funded through ISOC, and now it's being funded and the grants are being administered through the foundation. You can see how many projects, what the funding is, and what regions or how many regions and countries that we hit. And then we also have a slide to talk about the next slide, grants to support IXPs. And in this case, we have, again, great statistics about the number of programs, the amount of money, and the reach that we're getting regionally and in countries. So that's a summary of 6 of our 12 programs and some of the impact that it's had in the past year and what we measured. And again, all the details on all of these different programs that I've just outlined, that's all available in that big document called the Impact Brief from 2024. So I'll pause there for a sec, see if any questions specifically on the 2024 report. Sounds good. Yeah, a question here.
Ryan?
Right.
Yeah, I just fell off the ledge.
Nope.
Um,
Okay.
So backing up a little bit to Beyond the Net,
Uh-huh.
you talked about, you had 46 chapters that were funded, which is a 38% increase, which I
Mhm.
think is great. Do you happen to know how many chapters submitted proposals overall?
I do have that information, but not with me in
Okay.
terms of the numbers of applications from Beyond the Net over the year. I will find out for you. Yeah, absolutely. We track all of that, obviously. We need to keep
Okay.
an idea of what's going on percentage wise.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah. Other questions? No? Yeah? Charles? Okay.
Yeah, just a quick point following on Brian's question. I think many chapters do want to know why if in case they are rejected. So, that's been a consistent issue that sometimes they did not, most of the time they did not get the reason why.
Yeah.
So, yeah, if something can be done about that, that would help them a lot in terms of improving their future applications.
Yeah, so thank you for that question. Obviously, it would be wonderful if we had the resources to be able to get back to everyone who applied for a grant. Unfortunately, because of the volume of grants that we get, I mean, as I was mentioning, we get hundreds for research. We get sometimes that many for Bolt or for resiliency. And then we get a lot from Beyond the Net. And it's just hard, Charles, for us to right now be able to get back to everyone with details. I will say, I know with complete certainty that there is a real strong effort to talk with chapters in as many forums as we can to try to express and explain more about application processes, eligibility, et cetera, so that we're able to help them moving forwards for the next application so they'll be more successful.
Just a quick point, if it is, too much efforts to get back to them one by one. Either you come up with some general issues that most of these failed applications are, the typical issues. So you can probably, and the other point is maybe go through the regional liaison, the chapter liaison person. So that hopefully that will upload some of your work, but give him or her a little bit more work. But yeah, hopefully, just trying to streamline it.
Yeah.
If you say like for your team to go after to reply to hundreds of them, it might be too much, but trying to find a way to streamline this so that at least they get some general information. Yeah, that might help.
Yeah, I think one of the ways we're trying to do that is to host reflection calls, which are calls where we have an opportunity for the grantees. And we do this with all of our programs, but we have an opportunity for the grantees to get together and talk about things and talk about what happened with their applications. We also tend to be in touch with chapters a lot. So there are informal conversations that happen, but certainly finding additional avenues. There's nothing wrong with that. That's a good idea. So we will continue to pursue that because I know it's important. And you can see from the statistics that more chapters are more comfortable applying more and being successful in terms of the numbers of grants that we provide. So I think to see that trend is healthy, but I think it's also fair to make sure that we're getting back in touch as much as possible.
Just also to build on that and add to it, Charles, one of the most consistent bits of feedback I have when I speak to chapters, and I make sure I speak to chapters in every single place I visit, is not just about the response to grants, but about communication in general from ISOC to the chapters. That's why we brought Al Gaff on as the Director of Community Comms, and that's why he's looking at every single way we communicate with the chapters in the round, making sure that what we have is a much better way of communicating, and more importantly, he's listening from the chapters about how they want to be communicated with. So not just when it comes to the responses from grants, but to every single way we talk to our community. We're doing this in the best and most respectful way possible. So it's something we're looking at not just with the philanthropy team, but with the broader community strategy as well.
And you have Funke next.
Okay.
Thanks, Sarah. Thanks, Chris. I just wanted to ask if it was possible, and I don't know how that would work given ISOC and the foundation's registration documents and all that, but have you thought of decentralizing grant making?
And
Decentralizing grant making, because you talked about numbers. I want to assume that all the chapters across the world that ISOC, that belongs to ISOC would probably, or you be getting grant proposals and from all of them. And in my years as a grant maker, one of the things to do is to decentralize grant making, because I see some of the grant amounts, I think the $5,000 or
so, you mean how small and how large our grants? Yeah, we're
Yeah.
1,400 is our lowest for Global Encryption Day.
1,400.
Yeah.
That's American.
USD.
$1,400. Okay. So what about if you have, are there chapters or organizations that are, and I don't know the way you rank chapters, you know, I heard one yesterday, gigabyte chapters, I don't know what it means. But just saying, are there organizations that can absorb more funding and then help to re-grant
Re-grant, yeah.
to other chapters? For instance, if you have legacy chapters
Mhm.
in some countries, and they can, or regions or continents, and they can then sub-grant, or even organizations that ISOC funds on some of the projects that you have, some of the
Yes.
program areas.
Right.
And then the organizations that get the money, the larger money outside the $1,400, can then sub-grant to some of these chapters. That way, you can spread the burden of funding, but I think that's up to ISOC and how you're set up to do that. But I've found that that has worked for me
Yes.
a lot, especially for organizations that just need 5,000, 10,000. You don't
The
have the
little one.
bandwidth
Yeah,
to
well,
respond.
it's interesting you should raise that, because that is something that we've been discussing quite a bit, to see if there are better solutions where there can be a few more resources involved to help us with that type of thing. So we're looking at that whole re-granting model and providing, yes, organizations that have the capacity to do that. It's a question now of identifying where that opportunity is and then testing it and seeing how it goes, right? So we can set that up as a potential future way.
And the follow-on one is,
Sorry, just also to jump in on that though, one of the key USPs we have as an organization is our very close ties to on-the-ground organizations and our chapters and so forth. And so, you know, one of the key USPs when people are looking at us as a potential partner for a co-fund is that we can do exactly that. What we can do is we can get money out and we're very close to those organizations. There are situations where for structural reasons, we can't always give a grant to an organization and we use partners such as TechSoup to get around permissible beneficiaries. But actually maintaining that really close relationship with the grantees, understanding firsthand what the impact is, and being able to aggregate and bring those communities together is a big part of our USP. So I wouldn't want us to get to the situation where we were acting as a donor of one remove, because I understand, and obviously we're to a certain extent using that as part of our strategy for co-funding with bigger donors. But our size really means that that becomes something which is quite valuable for us as a skill and as something to execute.
Yeah, and we've talked about that a lot, the idea of having these great relationships and remembering that the survey that we did last year on satisfaction among our grantees was the fact that there was a lot of close collaboration with our grantees and making sure that we can continue to do that. But yeah, but to my point and what Chris was saying too, is that this is something that we are definitely looking at and seeing the best way to handle it. And the things that we've been doing from the beginning, has been a real test, learn and adapt, so that we might not go out and do a million of those, right? But we would start with one maybe and see what that looks like. Just like what we're doing with unrestricted giving and testing that.
You have Caleb in queue.
Okay.
I had a follow-on, apologies. Are your grants multi-year grants or just projectized grants or years?
So for some of the smaller ones, they are just project-based, right? For an IGF or for global encryption, right? That's straight up. But no, we're moving towards many more multi-year grants. larger grants, just because we feel like we're at a point right now where we should be able to manage that. And because we're so focused on impact, we all know that you can't measure impact in a really short period of time. You need to stretch that out. So we are eager to get more of those into our portfolio. Caleb.
So I think I flagged an idea from what she was saying, but I think it's what she was relating to was more towards the grantees, but not so much to the chapters. So the reason why I'm flagging this, and I think I'll probably need the help of Ilona and say maybe they could advise on it. We were on the LAC call, and I was just listening in, and quite a number of chapters were saying they had funding issues, probably Venezuela, right, Charles? Venezuela chapter that had like a funding issue and all of that. So I looked at it that, take for example, what if we fund the closest LAC chapter beside them and tell them that if there is no country to country restriction between, let's say, Mexico and Venezuela, right? And Venezuela can pass along the fund to, Mexico can pass along the fund to Venezuela chapter, right? It's just an idea. I don't know how that can work. I don't know if it is good accounting principle or legally if it is good. I am only just floating the idea.
Okay.
Right.
Okay, so just to be clear here, I think we have to be a little bit careful. As you said, we need to make sure that we have this discussion with Ilona and the other folks in the room. And I think maybe we want to have that a little bit later, right? We're running a little tight on time.
Yeah, I know
and
we're tight on time. Yeah, so I just keep going.
Yeah, so
Okay.
let's take that offline and we'll discuss it with Ilona and some of the other senior staff.
Thank you, Caleb. Next slide. We'll just go quickly. I can skip through this. This is what our monitoring, evaluation, learning and operations achieved in 2024, and then to keep going. And then communications, a lot of great success there. And next slide, please. Just to talk about quickly the Q4 and Q1 highlights coming up to the next slide. We have, you can see what we've done so far this year. 5 grant programs were launched, 4 new cohorts were presented, and there is on the 3rd bullet there, we launched an evaluation for our skills program. And I want to just point out that the initial results that have come in is that we're doing a lot of things right, and that there's a lot of, I talked a little bit about skills earlier, and there is definitely a confirmation that the way in which we've set it up is going very well. So we'll have more information on that later. And next slide. And we can skip that one, go ahead. So I would like to, we're not ending because I do want to show you next steps and I do want to show you expanding the team. But what I really want to show you, because we might not have time for all 3 of those things, is a video. This is just about 3 minutes long. So I'm going to go ahead and ask Muzan and Eric to play the video for us. It's the success story of one of our BOLT grantees.
We're here in southern New Mexico, the poorest school in the district.
I've never been on camera before. I don't know what to do with all this.
We've got a lot of social problems. There's a lot of violence in this neighborhood, drug abuse in the community with parents that have gotten addicted. A lot of grandparents raising children in our school.
We have a lot of people that have no connectivity, which is kind of surprising that in the United States. Getting a driver's license, applying for Medicaid, food stamps, education, everything is online now. We really take it for granted. If you don't have it, you're definitely going to get left behind.
The older parents or caretakers really do not have typically much aptitude or experience using technology.
Y yo como abuela cuido a mi nieto en edad escolar. Me dice, abuela, es que tienes que ver en la computadora, abuela, porque en la computadora están mis tareas. En principio no teníamos computadora, empezando por allí. Y yo ni idea de cómo entrar a ese programa de clases que ellos tienen.
Internet services provide a way for people to not only just communicate, but understand what's going on and not feel like they're being left behind by technology.
With Internet Society Foundation's help, we've been able to access fixed wireless, which is being able to transmit high-speed broadband through the air.
We're using cutting-edge fixed wireless technology. We need something that can withstand heat. We need something that can withstand monsoon rain. We need something that can withstand record-setting windstorms and sandstorms, which we've experienced since we've deployed.
So they're going from zero connectivity to having high-speed broadband.
Without internet connectivity, nothing else matters. Network, education, and technology. Those are our three verticals that we are focusing on.
Mira, programas de asistencia. No hay edad, no hay límite para aprender. El haber entrado al programa, el haber hecho el curso de formación y capacitación y darme cuenta, aquí está todo lo que puedo utilizar para ayudar a mi nieto, ya cambió todo. Y ya sé dónde tengo que ir. ¿Estás viendo? En la ciudad de Las Cruces, en la comunidad.
Without generosity top to bottom, this doesn't happen. Without ISOC helping us, those families' lives that we've started to change probably aren't being changed yet, or ever.
Okay, so we can see some really great stuff. Okay, we can clap. It's okay if you want to clap. All right, so I'm going to skip the last two slides and just see in the remaining minute or so if there are any other really burning questions that anyone has, and otherwise you can of course find me afterwards. Oh, Caleb, are you up still or okay? Okay. All right. So yeah, find me later. We're here the rest of the afternoon, and if I can elaborate on anything, I'm happy to. And I encourage you, as I mentioned, to read that full impact report when you have a chance. Thank you very much. Always a pleasure.
Thank you, and it's always a pleasure to see these stories of how the giving from the team is making an impact on people's lives. Thank you very much both for the work and for sharing that impact with us today. And the agenda back up for a moment. I believe. Thank you. So I believe that we're about to go into executive session. We will return briefly at the end of the executive session to close the meeting. But for anybody who is joined us remotely, this is the close of the open session and until about 4:30. Oh, sorry. Somebody's pointed out that we didn't actually approve the minutes, and there is a resolution for that. Has everybody read the minutes? Are there any concerns about them? May I ask somebody to move? Oh. Barry raises his hand before I finish my statement. Somebody to volunteer to pay for tonight's, oh, sorry. No, to move the minutes, and I saw Barry and Brian. So all those in favor, please raise your hand. That appears to be not quite unanimous. Charles, did you want to raise enter position? Are you in favor of the minutes or no? Okay. All right, that makes it unanimous among those present. Thank you very much. The resolution passes, and we're now ready to go to closed executive session. Thank you again, everybody, for your participation today, and thank you especially to our guests who've been very helpful and enlightening to the board. As we return to open session, I must ask the board members if there's any other business for the good of the order. Hearing none, we are adjourned. Thank you again.